Well, that was a decent race, wasn't it, everyone? Well, this is the Crystal Racing race report for the 2021 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. And your race winner today is Max Verstappen, who I will be giving 9.5 out of 10 for his performance this weekend. Missed our pole position with a mistake on his final lap in quali, but made up for it in the race with a brilliant start where he overtook Lewis Hamilton into turn one, and controlled the race from there, really. Never really had any problems. I mean, yes, Hamilton was closing in mid-race, but then, of course, Hamilton made that error. I'll speak about that later. But for Max Verstappen, this result brings him just 1 point within Lewis Hamilton's championship lead. We have got a proper fight on our hands this year. Thank goodness for that. Second place, Lewis Hamilton, 8 out of 10. Now, as for the mistake he made, which dropped him down 5 or 6 places, he was pushed onto the wet part of the track by Russell, but I will say his recovery drive was sublime. Absolutely brilliant once again, 8 out of 10. It is very much, he once again showed why he's a 7-time world champion and could be an 8-time world champion if he can keep putting out performances like that, but we will see. Third place, and my driver of the day, as well as a lot of people's driver of the day, Lando Norris. A superb performance to hold on to second place for so long, until of course the inevitable occurred and he was overtaken by Lewis Hamilton with a couple of laps to go. But nonetheless, it's his first podium of the season, it's his second career podium, and my word, this weekend he has absolutely destroyed Daniel Ricciardo, finishing about at least 27 seconds ahead of Daniel. A sublime performance. Absolutely dominated Ricciardo, and I've got to say this, Ricciardo is in serious trouble already. Fourth place, Charles Leclerc, 9 out of 10. A very good performance, qualified fourth, once again outperforming his Ferrari in qualifying, and did a pretty good job of running in the podium places before the inevitable occurred. So, you know, and as for Carlos Sainz, 8 out of 10. Both Ferrari drivers can be very happy with their performances, although Carlos Sainz did spin twice and he did struggle down the order for a bit, but his recovery drive in the last 20 or so laps after the red flag was very good. I've got to give him kudos for recovering, despite, of course, also a fairly poor qualifying performance, but nonetheless, that's 22 points for the Maranello boys at their home race. A very solid outing. Sixth place, Daniel Ricciardo, it's 7 out of 10. Ricciardo out-qualified Norris, but he only out-qualified Norris because Lando had his final qualifying lap deleted for breaching track limits. And I have to say, this weekend, Daniel was very average. Very average performance this weekend. Really, I don't know what to say. Oh dear. Seventh place, Lance Stroll, I beg your pardon. 8.5 out of 10. Once again, getting pretty much as the maximum out of the Aston Martin. Again, outperforming Vettel quite heavily, and then of course, again, banking a lot of championship points for the team at a time where the team is struggling with the car due to the low rate design and the new diffuser regulations and floor regulations. But Lance Stroll is continuing his strong form from last year, and it's very good to see. 8th place, Pierre Gasly, 8 out of 10. AlphaTauri really have to be quite disappointed with how they've started this season, you know. With Gasly qualifying 5th at both Bahrain and Imola, it's got to be said to only come out from the first 2 races with just 6 points. It's very mediocre, and I have to say that decision to put Pierre Gasly on wet tyres was really dumb, considering that there was no more rain that was going to come down on the track. The track was drying out. It was clearly intermediate conditions. I mean, for goodness sake, Max and Hamilton even made their inters become a pair of slick intermediates. So what in the living world were they doing, putting Pierre on wet tyres? I will never know. But solid recovery drive from Pierre. Yeah, and then of course 9th place, and provisional 9th place due to the fact he is being investigated for breaching rolling start procedures is Kimi Raikkonen for Alfa Romeo, scoring what is right now Alfa Romeo's first points of the season. But, you know, now he played once again, he played the waiting game very well, waited for other drivers to crash out in front of him once again. It's such a Kimi Raikkonen thing to do, just wait for someone to fall in trouble. But, of course, Kimi Raikkonen did a very good job to hold off the two Alpines and Perez for that precious 9th place. Very solid drive from the Finn. And hopefully, well, as for the rolling start, he spun on the, behind the safety car. He dropped down to P10, he stayed in P10, so, you know, he didn't breach any regulations there, but apparently I think there's an investigation of his radio messages between him and his engineer Julian. Apparently asking for guidance over it, whether it's a rolling start or a standing start, and I think he might be in trouble for that, which would be very, very harsh and incredibly unfair if the FIA penalised him and slapped 5 seconds on his time. Race time, which would mean that he would finish 12th, which would be absolute BS in my opinion. 10th place, Esteban Ocon, 8 out of 10. Out-qualified Fernando Alonso by over half a second. Having said that, though, he did spend a lot of the race struggling for pace, but he stayed in front of Alonso for most of the race, which is a very solid job. But to be fair, I think Alonso had more pace than him in the later stages, but that's not really Ocon's fault, is it? 11th place, Fernando Alonso, 7 out of 10. A bit more of a quiet weekend for the Spaniard, but, you know, at least he did pick up a bit of speed towards the end. 12th place, Sergio Perez, a very disappointing performance. After qualifying second in yesterday's amazing qualifying, Perez spun quite a few times, and then of course he got that 10-second penalty for overtaking Sainz and Gasly behind the safety car, which, I mean, that is completely against the regulations. He should have stayed in P6 after that, but Perez was absolutely annoyed with himself, and then he picked up another penalty for I don't know what, and then spun again. And then, of course, he had a problem with the steering wheel, and it was just a miserable day. But having said that, though, Perez really did overdrive in a wet condition, so that's 5 out of 10. 13th place, Yuki Tsunoda, 4 out of 10. Oh, dear. Yeah. Crashed down in Q1, meaning he had to start P20. That became P19 when Vettel had to start in the pit lane. Tsunoda made a very good start, got in the points for a while, was fighting with Kimi Raikkonen, and then at the safety car restart, at the red flag restart, he did spun and completely threw any chance of points away. Really probably should have finished, you know, 7th, maybe 6th, when you consider how much Ricardo was struggling. And I have to say, Yuki Tsunoda will be really embarrassed, should really learn some lessons from today's race, because I think he did overdrive a bit too much. 15th place, despite having parked up in a pit lane with a gearbox issue, is not 15th, sorry. 14th place is another unlucky driver, Antonio Giovinazzi, 8 out of 10. Was running in the points behind Kimi before he was forced to go to the pits to sort out a technical issue with his brakes. And unfortunately he was lapped because he had to slow down in order to get to the car to the finish. Really unlucky, 8 out of 10. Was also unlucky in qualifying because of a certain Nikita Mazepin being an absolute idiot. Oh dear. Yeah, unlucky Gio. Should have scored his first point of the season today, but didn't because of all of the shenanigans. 15th place was Sebastian Vettel. Got destroyed in qualifying yet again by Lance Stroll, but in the race he really was quite unlucky, having to start in the pit lane due to the technical issues with his gearbox. Apparently having issues with 6th gear throughout the race, then picked up penalties because, well, I've completely forgot now, but I'm trying to work it out. What was it? Was he... I think, you know, he was... I'm going to have to look at Twitter, sorry. Got Well, I mean, he overtook both Alpines. He held off Perez for quite a bit. And then, of course, you know, but unfortunately, with the gearbox issues, forced to park up, and he was holding off Perez for quite a bit. But you know, 7 out of 10 for Vettel. Quite a bit of improvement from his first race, but his qualifying is still quite bad. 16th place, Mick Schumacher, 8 out of 10. Well, I don't really know what to say because, you know, when you're driving a horse, you're just balls off the pace. Slowest car on the grid by an absolute country mile, despite the fact that they were able to get a lap back with the red flag and the rolling start with the lucky dog rule. Both horses were lapped again, meaning that they both finished 2 laps down. So, I mean, with Mick Schumacher, I have no idea how to rate him, so I'm just going to rate him 8 out of 10. And I mean, as long as he beats Mazepin, I'll be giving him 7 and 8 out of 10 for the rest of this season, because unless the horse improves, I don't really know how to rate Mick whatsoever. 17th place, 6 out of 10 for Nikita Mazepin. Finished the race, but what else did he do? I mean, okay, yeah, he was involved in the Latifi incident, but the thing is, Latifi cut across Mazepin, so really, that had actually nothing to do with Nikita. But as it was, Nikita kept himself out of trouble, but he was a lot slower throughout the race, so really, it's 6 out of 10. And then, of course, on to the retirees. Valtteri Bottas, 5 out of 10. George Russell, 5 out of 10. Valtteri Bottas, oh my goodness me, what an awful weekend. I mean, really. I mean, actually, you know what? Valtteri really should get 3 out of 10 because today's performance was just absolutely abysmal. I mean, what was he doing fighting with Russell in P10? I mean, obviously, and then, of course, you know, he did. Now, if you re-watch the incident, at the time I thought it was George Russell's fault, but then I did see Bottas slightly squeeze Russell onto the grass just as George was about to pass him, which meant Russell had to go on the grass, and Russell spun and torpedoed into Bottas. Now, you could say George was a bit over-optimistic trying to go around the outside, considering the track was a bit damp and everyone had just put on medium tyres, but I mean, seriously, Bottas, mate, what are you doing down in P10 in a Mercedes? I know the car is a lot harder to drive than last year due to the new regulations, the reduced floor and the reduced diffuser and the low rake design of the Mercedes, but wow, mate, you were getting lapped by the race leaders as well as around that time. I mean, it's just a bad performance. And really, you're very lucky not to get rejected today, because I think the other guy who retired on lap 1 was even more stupid than he did. George Russell, 5 out of 10. Really showed great pace again, but I have to say, though, he was probably a bit too optimistic trying to go around the outside in damp conditions. I mean, Bottas pushed him onto the grass. I mean, George probably should have exercised a bit more caution. And, of course, you have to realise he did cause Lewis Hamilton to go into the barriers at Tosa due to the fact he didn't slow down properly around that area. And Hamilton was forced to go into the barriers. So, yeah, really, I mean, kind of a rough weekend all round for the Mercedes team and their junior driver. Although Hamilton did redeem himself towards the end. And then, of course, Nicholas Latifi, 3 out of 10. I've got to say it, he is my reject of the day. Spun off. I mean, the guy is absolutely rubbish in the wet, but for him to spin off, and then go across on Mazepin, if you watch the replay, that was him apparently trying to turn to the right, and because he didn't realise Mazepin was there, he then literally just took himself out. Just a really dumb rookie error, and it's all his fault. And for me, he's gonna be the reject today, because that was 100% Latifi's fault. The guy is absolutely useless in the wet. And now time to look at the championship standings. Yes, Lewis Hamilton leads ahead of Max Verstappen, who is now just 1 point behind thanks to today's shenanigans. Lando Norris has got himself up to third ahead of Charles Leclerc. Bottas is down in 5th place. Oh dear. Perez is down in 8th place with only 10 points. Both of them will be really annoyed with themselves today. Some very poor performances from both of them. Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo 6th and 7th with 14 points. Lance Stroll doing well with 7 points. Pierre Gasly gets into the top 10 with 4 points. Kimi and Tsunoda are in joint 11th with 2 points each. And Ocon will be in 13th place with 1 point, of course. That might change if, of course, Kimi gets the penalty, which would mean that Ocon would get 2 points and Alonso would get 1 point. I mean, it would pretty much just shove Alpine in front of Alfa Romeo, but at this early stage of the championship, well, I'm not really sure how it works out. Mercedes are still leading the constructors' standings ahead of Red Bull. McLaren are in a healthy 3rd place ahead of Ferrari. Aston Martin are definitely in 5th place, regardless of what goes on with the penalties. AlphaTauri will be in 6th place because they've got 6 points with Gasly and Tsunoda. 7th place provisionally is Alfa Romeo. 8th place is Alpine, and of course that could change with, of course, if Kimi gets the penalty, Alpine will be in 7th and Alfa Romeo will be down in 8th. So thank you for watching. Do all the usual stuff here at Crystal Racing. I'll see you again next time.